Aloha and welcome to Connection to the Cosmos with your host, me, Dr. Lisa Thompson, where I have out of this world conversations with extraordinary people. And today I am super excited to have on Jess Senires. And I've had the opportunity to work with her before, so I'm extra excited about this one. But first, just a couple of announcements. So if you have not had the opportunity to grab my free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides, make sure you do that on my website, mysticmanta.com or drlisajthompson.com, and come to Hawaii. Come on one of my big island UFO tours where you will see the night sky in a whole new way using my advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles. And for more information about that, the website is bigislandUFOtours.com. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Jess. Hello, lovely.
Hello. It is lovely to see you.
You too. Okay, so let me share with the audience who you are because I think you're pretty fantastic. So
thank you.
Located in the Puget Sound area of Washington State, Jess Senires has been helping people all over the world for 30 years as a spiritually connected, intuitive energy worker and tarot reader. With a vast career working in finance, marketing, and management of small businesses, she is a versatile and knowledgeable business advisor. Her educational background is in the social sciences and possesses multiple degrees. Jess also has an extensive background in psychology. She is a big believer in science, the laws of physics and logic, for this universe anyway. She believes that science hasn't caught up with being able to explain psychic abilities yet, and hopes one day will. In the meantime, she has come up with several theories on her own. Extremely community focused, people have always been at the core of whatever work she's been involved in. She's passionate and excited to bring all her gifts forward to you. When she's not being a sassy psychic consultant, you can find Jess haunting her favorite coffee shop, going on adventures with her partner, learning new things, teaching dance, or snuggling up with her 2 kitties.
Yep.
And I think one thing when we first met, what I did love about you is your sassiness.
That is fantastic. I am also a big fan of my sassiness.
And so, before we get into the conversation that we're going to have, because I don't even know if I know this, I would love for you to share with me and the audience kind of how you grew up, like spiritual, religious, something else. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so it was actually really unique. So my parents held the belief that I got to choose my own faith, my own religion. And so didn't go to church on Sundays, didn't really understand why I couldn't play with my friends on Sundays, like growing up in kind of a small town in the Bay Area of California. Yes, that did exist at the time. And so it was very much different. I was always very curious. I was always asking friends about their faith and their, and the literature and the books and the stories, and even going to church with them sometime on Sundays. And whether it was, to the Mormon temple or to the Baptist church or to the Jehovah's Witness, like it was all just a little bit of everything. And so it was something really unique in that aspect. And so growing up, even, I grew up a child of divorce, so bounced through different households and things like that. And even then, it was never something, that was really mainstream in our house. It just really wasn't any of them. When I got a little older, my mother actually found basically Wicca and goddess worship for a little while. And that was a really big influence on me. And just, I loved the idea of, I connected more with the more female divine spirit, goddess, however you want to describe it, energy, and just being able to pretty much identify with that. Like, actually, like it out of all of the exploration, that was the one was like, this sweater feels good, like trying on the sweaters here. And, and I happen to like the color. And so that was part of it. It also kind of helped explain a lot of the experiences I was having growing up, being, having precognizance, being also clairvoyant, clairaudient, and also just deeply intuitive. And so being able to draw on, this mysticism, but also, with folklore and things like that to really kind of help me explain my world, because it's, growing up as a kid in the 90s, there were only so many metaphysical books, the Barnes and Noble shop that you could read, right? Without having to sneak them home. And so just that was a really big influence on my life. And so growing up there really, like I said, there really wasn't that religious aspect, which is fascinating, because in my dad's side of the family culture, they are very deeply Catholic, all involved in the Catholic Church, doing really good work into the world, very devout. I even have nuns. They were the coolest people ever, by the way. And so just to have this kind of this openness, and the encouragement for curiosity without judgment, it allowed me to kind of really form my thoughts and my beliefs, and then eventually my spiritual practices, which really helped me explain my reality, right? Because science is catching up better on how to explain what they call PSI. They even changed the name of the study to remove some of the bias of it, just basically any kind of psychic phenomena things. And they've been doing tons of studies about this. And actually, they learned that Einstein and Schrodinger were kind of dabbling with it a little bit with entanglement theory. And that's all in the quantum physics woo side of it, literally, because they were like, nah, these things aren't real stuff. And then after several decades later, starting, they're like, no, this phenomena is actually consistent.
Yeah.
And so being able to incorporate that as well, with this deeply spiritual side, as well as this logic and pragmatic and very scientific, because that's how I've had to learn, right? As being an observer of my own reality, to be able to figure out the rules, and what's possible, what's not possible, what's acceptable for me, what's not acceptable for me, and other things that just totally blow my mind. And I'm just radical acceptance. Okay, here we go. But yeah, growing up, it was very much you go to school, you have after school activities. The spiritual aspect was not a thing. Just really wasn't a thing. So yeah.
Okay. Well, and same for me. I grew up with a religion. I got to explore and dabble. My mother, was always into the metaphysical science and the extra woo. So then I got to do that with her, but also be exploring those other aspects. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, but so you didn't go into that though for your career. You were focused in other areas. So tell us a little bit just about that journey.
Right. So basically, my whole life up until maybe about almost 4 years in business. So no, until about 4 years ago, really. The spiritual world was separate, right? You got up, you went to school, you got an education, you got a car and a job and a house and a career and all those things, right? And you just didn't talk about this other side, because that's crazy town, right? We just don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And, especially at the family functions. And so being able to, always have this part of, being proud of what I did for running other companies, being proud of working for small businesses, being proud of, constantly finding a job, because I am part of that generation where, the ability to work in one of the old school companies where you can have a pension and retire just doesn't exist. Didn't exist. And so being able to take those skill sets and build on them and work with other companies, small companies particularly, where you have to wear multiple hats to make it successful and do things properly, and also learn how not to do things, by examples, and really showing up powerfully in this space. But then always this other side of me where I was a mentor. I've been a mentor. I have been working with tarot for 30 years. Let's just talk about that real quick, because most people don't have jobs for that long, let alone hobbies for that long.
Right.
Yeah. And here I am doing it full time now. And so, always having this other side where I've been hired because people liked my energy. They looked at my resume like, wow, this is impressive, but I really like your energy. You belong here. And also, I've been a mentor. I have taught people how to read tarot. I have been somebody that people just kind of find randomly through the grapevine of, hey, I'm having this really weird experience. Can you help me with this? Oh, I want to learn more about this. Or, my kid is experiencing this. Can you come help? And I'm like, absolutely. But never something in the forefront. And then you fast forward to basically 2020, and I'm working for a global organizational and development firm, doing concierge customer service and event coordination and traveling, and And then we have a pandemic and we don't have any more events and things are downsized, right? And then I'm sitting here going, crap, what do I do? What do I do? Here I am again in this spot of, circumstances. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with myself. And I don't sit still very well. And so my friends all point at the tarot, the silly amount of tarot decks that I have. And they're just like, duh, duh. And I'm like, really? I don't know. This is like putting the crazy pants on and taking it out in public now. And so my journey has really been the last, even just up until the last few months ago, even one, identifying a psychic, like incorporating it into my identity and being public about it. Second, being proud of what I do and how that affects everything. How I show up, what I do, how I do it. And, it's also kind of this beautiful point of like, I ran out of fucks to give because I had been doing everything the correct political, correct professional way. And you know what? I got tired of it, burned out.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, I was doing Down to Earth Local part-time for a while. I was the managing director of a marketing agency. So the boss, basically. And also circumstances, we worked in the, mostly with the IT and technology sector. And beginning of the year, we lost all of our prospects and all of our clients within 2 months just because they put everything on freeze. And it was like, okay, well, keep pushing a burnt out team, including myself, or wrap it up nicely with a bow and give it back to the owner and close everything up while there's still money in the checking account, right? It's simple. And then being in this beautiful space to step into Down to Earth Oracle full time, and already meeting my goals for this year. They were small goals, but I did them. And looking forward to continuing. I've now been in business officially for 4 years, and it is the most satisfying work I've ever done. I love that I get to show up very differently into this space. So like I specialize working with other business owners. So I get to still do what I love with the business side of things, being an advisor, being a consultant with that. But then you get to throw in like this extra sassy sauce on top with tarot and psychic abilities and, all of these gifts and being able to put it on the table and, give sound advice, give plans, give skill sets and tools and have it be consistent and good, and really shine with that and make the world a better place one person at a time. I'm like, how could you go wrong? How could you go wrong?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right. I love it. And, even though the pandemic definitely, there are mixed feelings about it, there are people like you and others and me that we were able to really pivot and make massive changes in our life. And I think that was one of the things why it came in, was it gave people choice.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how are we going to live our life?
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah, one of the really cool things that happened, and I actually was recently asked about this not too long ago, was like, being psychic, did you know that the pandemic was coming? And it's like, actually, no, I did not. Like, Lord knows if I had, things might have gone completely differently. But actually, astrologers at the time, even before 2020, were like, WTF? Like, WTF is happening here? And really going through, how it's unfolding and everything. And it was phenomenal just to be kind of like a witness on the back burner of this, being like, wow, not only just the validity, validation of, just how astrology works, everything else like that, for those who are just not totally aware of how it works, but also just the powerful impact of it. And how just, people across the globe were like, this is going to be a thing. Not quite sure how it's going to all play out, but holy moly, hold on to your butts. And just also being able to learn, grow, and change on a personal level for myself. I'm very much a social butterfly and an extrovert. I recharge my batteries like a solar panel. And I learned a lot. I am not designed to be an astronaut on a solo space mission. Not a thing for me. Not a thing for me. But even, with how, society has changed, and even during this process of, the pandemic, how a lot of people turn to spirituality for guidance, for aid, for something. And, but that's kind of always been a key role of spirituality and religion throughout time, is when there are these major incidents, experiences, We look to that for comfort. We look to that for explanation. And that's just part of how we're designed. And it's a beautiful thing that a lot of people have been able to step up into the space, and including myself, of recognizing that, yeah, the way I've done things is not sustainable for me. It's time to step up into my calling, change my identity, step into it bravely, and also scared shitless of it all, and be able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive with it, has been extremely rewarding. And I'm finding that a lot of people that I know in the spiritual practice community and things like that have similar stories where they've been asked to step up, and we do.
Yeah.
And that's been a blessing, really.
Well, and I have talked to so many people recently. I've been doing all of these kind of pre-recordings for my
Mm-hmm.
podcast rather than doing it live like I have over the last year and a half. And
Mm-hmm.
so many of them really stepped out when the pandemic hit, just like
Mm-hmm.
you. And even just like me, of like, I mean, I had my spiritual business, but when I moved here to Hawaii, that's when I came out of the ET closet.
I love it.
Where I couldn't, back in Olympia, I didn't feel like I could show that side of myself because I still was trying to be taken seriously with my other business,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, like for you, because you're still in the same community that you were in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, how has that been for you of people that previously that you might have known or worked with? Like, are they embracing you fully, like being, hey, here I am?
Right. So sometimes it's a mixed bag of cats. Most of it is very positive. Like I have to say, overall, very, very positive. And people who know me, know that I'm very intuitive, that, part of the decision making process isn't just logic or emotional. It's kind of that intuitive process as well. So they know that about me. There were a few, like, especially on LinkedIn, of people that I've worked professionally with in event coordination, in corporate world, things like that, where they're like, oh, I had no idea. And I'm like, that's because you weren't supposed to. And so, but actually they're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense now. And I'm like, oh thanks. Um, and so, yeah, that has been wonderful. And even, being considered an asset to them still, versus just total dismissal. But, yeah, like even though that has been phenomenal, there have been other instances. I went to one networking meeting, and it was local here, and with people that I knew. So I was like, safe space. We're going to be fine, right? And I was just surprised at how people that were not in my immediate circle of community, right? Still a part of my community, but not my knew me personally, right? Completely dismissed what I did. And dismissed me in the process. And don't get me wrong, I was very mad, and I wanted to print out my resume and stand on all the tables and show every single one of them how qualified I am to be here. I did not. I showed up with compassion for them and for myself, and also just understood that, like I learned a long time ago, I don't need to prove what I do to anybody. If people come up to me like, oh, you're a psychic, prove it. No, thank you. I am not interested. You want that? Book an appointment. You can spend, $80 or $150 of my time. Fine. Great. But I learned that I don't need to do that. I have to show up with confidence. I get the opportunity to show up in leadership of how I want to be taken, how I want to be perceived. And it is not also my job to change people's perception of me that really don't care or aren't curious. And part of it too is understanding, this is where that social science background comes in. A little bit of that curiosity of visiting different religions and stuff like that is that, what I do to some people is very scary. It's very scary. And a lot of times I hear, I don't want to know. I'm very closed off. And my answer is, that's fine. You don't have to know. But I always am puzzled by this question too, because it's like, what don't you want to know?
Right.
And the association of it's future and spooky and scary. And the truth is, it's actually more about you and where you're at now and what possibilities, things sometimes there are heads up. A lot of my readings mostly focus on the present, which is touches of the future. You want a straight future one? That's fine. I got date ranges for how the accuracy rate fluctuates after about 6 months. But it's, I'm a Davider, that's how I know. And it's just that idea that, that self-reflection tool of the, how the media, Hollywood history, but also, religious aspects, particularly, on the Christian side of things, just how that really closed a lot of this off for historical reasons, things like that, social patterns, et cetera, et cetera. And my job is not to invalidate or harp on that, but it is a barrier. It is a barrier. And so I'm respectful of that, but I understand that, people's behavior is a reflection upon them. It's not a reflection upon me.
Yeah.
And I don't need to get all pissed off about it anymore. I can let it go. I mean, yeah, it was shocking and hurtful, don't get me wrong. But I also, like I said, I understand that, I don't have to be liked by everybody. They don't have to know what I do. But you know what? I'll be damned. I've barely made an impression.
Yeah.
Just by showing up. And it's that idea too of like, one of my goals is to make this normal. Like, this is normal for me. This is my version of reality, completely normal for me.
Yes.
And most people, I'm going to say pretty much all people, all have some intuitive reaction to some kind, because we are intuitive spiritual creatures, whether we like it or not. It's just part of the makeup.
Right.
And, and a lot of times it's socialized out. And, family cultures, things like that, that's fine. But it's that idea of being open, being curious, understanding this is a resource. A lot of my clients are therapy adverse. And so being able to provide a safe space with some psychological inputs, that provide them with comfort, with knowledge, with tool sets that can really help them. Like, I love being that person. And it's not like a catch-all spot. It's one where I'm making it very defined and stepping up, also not in just like the community spheres, which is huge for me, but also in the business spheres as well. I love working with business owners, particularly solopreneurs, because, we are our businesses and we are the decision makers. And when you have invested everything possible and your livelihood is on the line, that's a shit ton of pressure. It's shit ton of pressure. And if you make one wrong choice, right, it can fuck everything up. And so being able to provide support, a second, set of eyes, even looking at, like, my favorite thing is decision making. Oh my goodness. Being able to help owners ask the right questions, make sure they're doing it for the right reasons. And then what are potential outcomes? Like, that's ease of an anxiety. That's actually, having confidence of like, well, if I go down this path, these are the actual things that will fall into place. Is that what I want? What about alternative options? Because we're sometimes so smack dab in the stew pot, we don't even realize it half the time.
Right.
And so being able to see different alternatives, like, I love being able to provide that in, because I want people to make the best decisions for themselves. Like, I'm not going to dictate, like 90% of the time. I'm like, there are times I'm just like, no, that isn't a good idea. Let's rethink this. Why? What are their options? Let's dig a little deeper. Let's pull apart the little knot and find out, what's all coming together. But just make the best choices for them so that they have more peace, they have more flexibility, whatever that they want, that they can get. And it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And I love that, because I was going to have you explain maybe how you do work with business owners. Because, I mean, how valuable of a tool to just, because of course, there are business coaches. I know a lot of business coaches.
And they are worth their weight in gold.
They are, absolutely. And it's always good to have additional people on the team, especially, like you're saying, as a solopreneur, because really, like, being just yourself, number one, it's really lonely, but also, like, we don't always see the bigger picture for ourselves. We might be able to see it for other people really well, especially when we are intuitive, psychic, whatever.
Right.
It's easier to see for other people.
It is.
So even, I think, reading cards, would you say reading for other people is a little easier? Or
so for me, so it's really funny. So I am it's funny. So there's I'm laughing because it really is funny, because this happens all the time. So I'm at the point where I don't read for myself. And part of the reason is because when I read for myself, it's like the intuitive psychic gift just switches off. And I'm like, oh great, what's this? It's a card. And I'm like, that's that's not helpful. Anything else? Nope, nope, it's a card. I'm just like, and so, but the minute I read for somebody else, it's like all the lights are on, all the channels open, everything else. And it's like, okay, I can break it down to just the basic meanings of the card. And I can look at my life and be very logical and analytical about it, but it misses that spice. It misses, it's missing. It's definitely missing. And this isn't one of those like, there are a lot of readers who don't read for themselves, and part of it too is it's also just good practice. One is, in the spiritual community, things like that, is to have somebody you check in with, because we have to practice what we preach, right? Like that is so important, to show up in authentic truth, and walk the walk and talk the talk. And so being able to check in and being like, all right, I've taken myself as far as I can go. I'm only human. I am not perfect. Like, what else am I missing? I've done everything I can. And you
Yeah.
need that outside perspective. But also just, there are other readers out there who get to this point where we're just like, we can't read for ourselves because we're in our own damn way, just like everybody else.
Right.
So
Exactly.
having that resource is huge. And, finding, I found that I'm very unique in the spiritual world because I work with businesses and business owners a lot of the time. And
Mhm.
how that looks, like, to answer your other question too, is that it's a lot of decision making. Like, sometimes, like, I've got one client recently that was looking to possibly sell their business, and they wanted to make sure that the offer was going to be, legit. And so I'm like, yeah, you're having the appraisal done right by an outside company, right, to make sure that the due process is actually legit.
Right.
But also to find out, what that would look like, and why aren't they off looking at partnership first, to make sure that the integrity of the business is still going to be there when you leave and walk away. But also, I've also had another client that does have business coaches and things like that. And I often always say my services work best when somebody has a therapist or a coach that they're working with. And it's a swift kick in the ass. You need to go into the right direction. They're the ones that beautifully hold your hand for the unfolding process. And
Right.
that is not my skill set. Um, I don't have the patience for it. I know myself too well. And it's, they were, following a lot of coaches online, and they also have their own personal coach, and they were trying to do this one particular way of, like, you're not supposed to be logical about your business, you're supposed to just be always intuitive. And I'm like, it's both. You have to have both. And, but also validating my clients' experience, because they were fighting it so hard. They had such a hard time with them. Like, it's just not for you. And that's okay. Go find something else.
Mhm.
So needing that external validation, and also, again, coming up with alternative perspectives, different ideas, thinking outside the box. One of the big things I've run into too with clients is, like, as solopreneurs, right? There's only so much expansion we can do because we're just one person. We hit a ceiling, and it is not expandable. You cannot grow more unless you bring more people on, right?
Right.
Go into a partnership, a collective, that kind of a thing. And they just weren't sure about that. They thought that they were stuck growing as far as they can go. And sure enough, just within having a conversation, they're like, oh, I guess I can do this other thing instead.
Mhm.
That's not so mainstream. That's a different way of doing things. And allowing for there to be more lateral movement versus just horizontal is huge.
It
Huge.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, so okay. So couple things popped in
Hmm.
while we're talking about all the different things. So number one, you have this psychic intuition, all of that. So not only do you know what the cards represent, but
Hmm.
you are also getting extra information. So
Yes.
why I want to bring that up is that there are some people that I know that are maybe newer to
Hmm.
tarot, that are, reading out of the book and trying to do readings like that. And we all have to start somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
But some of them definitely are not tapped in, and they are just trying to make money without understanding what they're doing. So can you explain, like, why who you work with for
Right.
tarot readings is really important?
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. And I mean, part of it is, I am such a big supporter of new readers. Like I said, because, like you said, we all start somewhere, right? And also part of it is they're starting new businesses. And so they need, like, actual, like, guidance on where things are going. I'm working on an ebook about that, by the way. And so yeah, there's that aspect. But yeah, like who you go to as a reader. I actually recently did some content about like what makes a good reading. And what makes a good reading is you can ask questions. You as the receiver of the reading can ask questions. If something doesn't make sense, ask the question. It should be a conversation. It shouldn't just be a one-way word vomit. And if you're sitting there going, wow, that was really mystical and I have no idea what the hell I walked away with, ask the questions seriously.
Yeah.
Take away what resonates with you. But if it's not more than, if it's less than, I'm going to say probably 80% of the reading, then yeah, ask questions, throw flags, something. It should be a combination of somebody who does read intuitively, which is they get information from the cards, the symbols, things like that, without necessarily, you know, knowing the actual like structure of tarot necessarily or the classic meanings, interpretations of it. And that is you need to have a good smattering of both.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm constantly doing is learning. Even 30 years later, I'm still learning of different ways of reading tarot. And each deck is different too. So each artist, each creator has their own interpretations too. So it's like having like, I'm dating myself, it's like having a Rolodex of information. And being able to be like, okay, this is that flavor, this is that connection, this is that meaning that's coming through versus, you know, standard stuff. And don't get me wrong, even I still pull the book out. Depending on the deck. And part of it is because I'm going flip, 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 flip. Nope, nope, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. Okay, well, I'm getting told now, go look at the book. So I'll go look at the book and I'll be like, ah, perfect, I'm just going to read this. And there's no shame in that whatsoever.
Yeah. Right.
And, but yeah, definitely work with somebody who, you know, you have to practice. You have to practice so much because not only is it a talent, but it's a skill set. Skill sets help shape our talents. And no, people do not have to be psychic to read tarot, right? You can get used to the meanings of the cards. You can develop and hone your intuition as part of those skill sets that come through. But yeah, I always tell people when you're spending money, do your research, do your homework, ask for reviews, look at the reviews. What are their rates? A lot of times, people starting out don't charge a lot of money for it. And I'm a big fan of, you know, if you're doing what you're doing and you do it really well, charge appropriately. And that is totally acceptable. Yes, look for specials and deals and things like that, of course. But, you know, find out who you're working with. What's their background? How long have they been doing this? Do you connect with them in some way? Or, you know, is this, and I'm going to say this very teasingly as well, you have to have a sense of humor with what I do. Or are you at a fair and you come across them and getting a reading, you know, and I'm like, that's me. You came and saw me. I understand this. But at the same time, you know, find out more, you know, how do they get back to the community? How are they involved in the communities that they are doing? Is this because, you know, they are deeply spiritual and this is their outlet? Fabulous, fabulous. But make sure you connect with the readers. And if they're if you are just kind of stumbling into this new and you're a new reader, go read for as many people as you can. You know, read for tips, read for free, go sit at a coffee shop, sit at a bar, wherever, because that is where you're going to understand that your version and how you read is unique and it's different. I love that a lot of people are offering classes on how to read tarot, and it's in my community, they're doing it well. They're telling people, yes, how to hone the intuitive side of it, but yeah, also memorize some of the basic damn meanings.
Yeah.
Like, because that gives the context, that gives the framework. And then, you know, you can play within that, play without that, understand what's the intuitive message, understand what's your own bullshit coming through that you need to kind of stuff back and hold your own bias accountable, right? And yeah, and also learn the history of tarot, understand where it comes from, understand, I'm a big social justice person, huge into equity. And so understand, you know, the history and the privileged class that was able to have it. Understand that it's not even until, God, 2015 that more diverse tarot decks started being created.
Oh, serious?
Serious. Like,
Okay.
yeah. It's really not until 2015 that
Wow.
it's more diverse, more ethnically diverse, not just that, but sex and gender preferences and physical abilities. I mean, that's one things that I always specialize with and really hone into, because I do believe that tarot is for everybody. And I do believe that representation really, really matters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can't just be a bunch of white people running around all the time.
Well,
no.
so what happened like in 2015 that might have
So
made that
yeah, I
change?
actually I'm working with my marketing person. We're just about to launch this stuff. I had to do a silly amount of research, which it's good. A lot of what's happening is in a lot of the more indigenous and BIPOC communities, it's like almost like a 50% increase of the younger generations own tarot. They're looking at tarot and they're creating these own decks themselves. The other thing too is the opportunity for self-publishing. One of the big tarot decks that I use is the This Might Hurt tarot deck, and I bought this several years ago through an independent female artist. It is one of the most inclusive decks I can find out there, and also one that really resonates with me. I love a deck where I can see myself in, I can see my clients in, I can see my community in, and people that I don't even know yet.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's not really until this. There was some parts in like the early 1980s that you started seeing like the Native American tarot and the Japanese tarot. And the 90s a little bit here and there of like a colored person in the baseball, a person of color, excuse me, in the baseball tarot. To honor Jackie Robinson and all those wonderful players. But even then, it's still super limited, really, until about 2015. Some of it is that you start having an artist revolution and artwork being displayed with tarot. You have, like I said, this huge movement where younger generations in the BIPOC community start wanting more representation, and so having more accessibility as well. You don't even get the queer tarot until, gosh, I think that one was like 2022, so not even that long.
Oh, wow.
It's been out. So yeah, it's just been a lot of it is who's most represented in the culture, unfortunately, and so that's a lot of shift and a lot of changing, and I love that.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That's
so
quite actually inspirational because I'm all about social justice as well.
yeah, yeah.
And mhm.
It's good. It's good. I love it. I really do love it. And it makes my heart happy seeing more and more. But also, like, I love the chance to support independent artists as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so, okay, you could say yes or no, but I'm
Okay.
just curious if you would be willing to just give us an example of a little reading, whether you want it to be for me or it could be for more collective.
Let's just do collective. Part of it is my readings tend to be deeply personal, and I would not want to make you uncomfortable super
Oh,
publicly.
I'm an open book though, so I would okay. But
I believe in consent, and I really hold strong values on oh my goodness, on confidentiality. So let's just do for a general collective. So what it is I just kind of tap into the energies of kind of what's going on. And actually, let's make it real fun. Let's do it specifically to the business for the week that this will be put out into the world.
This is coming out September 5th.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So let's just see what's going on out there. All right. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So one of the big things that's happening is I'm hearing that, there's wanting to make successful decisions, which I think is hilarious because we just talked about like what that looks like to make decisions, but also understanding that, yes, being in the limelight when it comes to your business specifically, and understanding that, yes, even though things are good, it's not sustainable, one. And you need to be able to really step into a way that is soul satisfying for you. You're going to have to make a decision. Is this what you really want to continue to do with your work? Or do you need to do something else? Even though, yeah, you are, you as in collective you, it is successful. People are celebrating you for your accolades and how far you've come, and possibly a lot of social media attention, right? But really needing to decide, is this what you want to continue to do? Like, all people see are the bright and shiny things, right? But it's all the stuff behind the scenes that are going on. And let's talk about why. Yeah, possibly indulging a little too much and recognizing that this is an unhealthy balance for you. Yes, people are lifting you up. Yes, people are excited about what you do, but fame and fortune isn't always for everybody, right? Everybody dreams about that, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily for you. There is a lot of temptation. There is a lot of things that question you down into a slidey slope of not so great things. Let's find out also another why. Yeah, definitely also getting inspiration to do something different, of recognizing it's the same old, same old. Yeah, like, yeah, you're good at what you do, but are you bored? Probably. So it's a good idea to embrace a new decision and also shift your perspective on how things are going. Yes, it's successful. And like I said, this is just how everybody sees it, but how are you looking at it? And what do you need to shift up and do that really sits within your wheelhouse? And also taking a break, letting some ideas to go, that this is a transformation process and one where it's time to really maybe pivot hard and let some of this go. And don't worry about the disappointments for everybody else and what they're going to think because you're the one living your life, not them. So that's kind of a quick and dirty.
Yeah, well, okay. And so what I love about how you just demonstrate that is you are seamlessly weaving together a story very quickly as you're pulling these cards, right? So you're not like it's you're not in your head. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
because I've been able to experience you before, I wanted to show you off
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
to the world. Now, for people who maybe don't have a business, who are like,
Mhm.
well, I want a personal reading. Do you do that for people as well?
I do. I do offer personal readings. I offer, relationship focused ones. That doesn't always mean romantic. It just can mean a relationship, what's going on with the people around you that you're surrounded by, family, things like that. I also offer general ones, which is a little bit of everything. D, all underneath the sun. I don't charge by card pulling. I don't charge by question. I charge by my time because you're going to get the most out of it, and I'm not going to gatekeep for if you want to figure out where things are going with your career, or if you're having difficulty with a friend, or you're thinking about starting your own business or not. Like, I want people to have access to all of that, and that's important to me. That's really important to me. So yes, back to your storytelling. Yes, I'm very much a storyteller, and part of that is technique as well. So not only am I getting, yes, some of the actual meanings of the cards and different versions of those meanings, but also getting the intuitive aspect, the psychic aspect of it woven into it as well. So it makes sense. And that's not, every reading is unique. So there are times where I'm like, I don't know what that means. We're going to hold on to that and we'll come back to it later. And if it still doesn't make sense, we'll leave it alone. We'll go from there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and because you do have massive amounts of decks, how are you deciding which ones need to be with a specific person?
I love being asked this question. So part of it is I take a few minutes and just kind of tap into my client's energy beforehand and find out which decks have the meanings, have the messages for them, so to speak. It's like mail call. And part of it is because the deck, the artwork resonates with them. There are specific messages within that artwork, or just the flavor of the deck that they need to hear. And so I trust that. And I show up with curiosity of like, okay, this is where we're at. And I always find it interesting when I buy like more collector type decks. And I'm like, I'm never going to use this for a client. Well, I'll be damned if I don't. And I always find that fascinating because I talk with my clients about this. I'm like, okay, I've never actually read with a client with this deck before because I bought this for da, 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 da. And they're like, oh, well, that makes total sense to me. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love it. Well, so okay. So I create oracle decks, not tarot cards. And so
I have yours, by the way.
do you actually incorporate oracle cards into the readings as well? And for people who don't know the difference, I mean, I could explain, but I would love you to explain the difference.
Right. So, just a side note, I'm actually working with an artist right now to create my own oracle deck. And the difference between oracle and tarot is that tarot has a really specific structure. It has a specific number of cards, number of suits, number of major arcana, minor arcana, court cards. That never changes. How they're interpreted, names, that can shift around depending on which type of tarot deck you're using, but they're all pretty much universally in this one structure. Oracle cards, anything goes. Anything goes. Number, meanings, types, illustrations. A lot of times oracle decks are much more abstract in thought processes and ideas and meanings. And I do own quite a bit of oracle cards. They aren't always my favorite. Part of it is there are some that I work with. If anybody catches, I read for the collective on a lot of my social medias. I do use oracle cards in that. And I kind of use those as like categories of, like this is the lens and the filter of what you're going to be looking at this through. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that structure.
Mhm.
I do have some that are much more abstract. And I find that those are ones that I use more for myself sometimes,
Mhm.
or I appreciate the artwork, or I appreciate the sentiment behind them. But I don't use them entirely. I've had a client ask, like, oh, can you use Oracle cards with me? And I do my best with them. And I find that, though, that they're more, for the way I read, is that they're more of like a category filter. Like, this is how you should be viewing this through, or there's a specific message for them within the written text a lot of the time. But as I say, I only do what I'm told in two things in my life. One is tarot, and two is dancing, and everything else is good luck with that. So yeah, if I am told, because I'm clairaudient, if I am told it's in the oracle decks, I will go to the oracle decks.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you intuitively choose which deck needs to.
Yeah, I actually, part of being an energy worker, I actually see it. Like, it's like putting, like, the lens, we'll keep the lens in the filter. It's like putting a little lens down and being like, oh, this one's glowing. Okay, we'll take that one. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so I love that. So you have the clairaudience, you're
Hmm.
hearing things, and then the clairvoyance, where
Yep.
that energy is popping out.
Hmm.
And are the other clairs there for you?
They are. They're pretty much all there. You can click all of those boxes. They might
Okay.
not be all with the services that I offer, but they are there. And I honor the fact if one of them comes through, I honor it. And I say, okay, this is coming through. This is how it's coming through. Believe it or not, the most interesting thing is tasting energy. Believe
Mm.
it or not. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I have a little bit of that taste one and that smell one.
Oh, I don't smell, but I definitely can taste it. And it's interesting and under identifying the different flavors, and then kind of like, under like holding that open space of like, I'm not sure what this means, and it's okay to not know, but to hold it and be like, this is what I'm getting. Take it how it resonates for you. You at least have the information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so okay, so we are finishing up 2023. Things have been starting, they're shaking up because we like going back to astrology, right? We're now entering the age of Aquarius,
Yes,
backing and then
yes.
going back forward.
Yep,
So
yep.
have you done any kind of collective readings for 2024? Or, and I know you said 6 months is kind of
Yeah. So
out.
not.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why. I think part of it is because I have done, when I first started, kind of experimenting with collective energies and how that felt and everything else. I was learning, and I did the whole let's do the whole kit and caboodle versus taking little chunks at a time and understanding the differences in the flavors. And it almost short circuited me. So I think it would be interesting to see what that would look like. I do offer full year readings where we actually go through each month to see what's going on. And I do that based upon when the person books or if they want their whole next year. But as for a giant collective reading, I think that that would be a really interesting experiment to see. And see, this is where me and social scientist comes in. I'm like, oh, let's try it. Let's see what goes on and see how that works. But the other thing too is that as a collective, I wouldn't know how to narrow it down. Like, are we doing just the US? Are we doing the global world? Because there's so much. That's part of it, is I wouldn't know how to quantify that data almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd have to really think about how I'd want to do that.
Okay. Well, I mean, just from a quantum mechanics perspective, I could see
Yeah,
how that could be really challenging because it's like, well, that's just one timeline potential, but then
right.
other timeline potentials that could shift very easily.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I found with my gifts and talents, and it's actually been changing to where it's not just been 6 months. It's actually been coming out further and further as I use my talents, as upgrades happen, things like that. Just being able to see what the data is supporting or not supporting. And I have been finding that, even with timeline shifts, um, things that are still happening. It might not be the exact way I'm describing it, but those elements are still there, just in a different view. And that's usually, it's now about 8 months out after that things shift.
Okay.
But yeah, it's fascinating to see with the quantum mechanics side, with the timeline changes, things like that, how things kind of expand out, but then narrow back down on a different path. But those elements are still the same, just a different flavor. But I always tell people, yes, you do have free will. Yes, things are going to happen that you can control. Like life shit happens. It's how
Right.
you deal with it, right? You can't prevent certain things. There are just certain constants in life, like death, taxes, and change. Those things will always happen. But how do you want to handle it? How do you want to deal with it? It is coming in. It's a heads up. How do you want to handle this? That will always be, that is always still pretty solid and pretty consistent. But finding out, the further things go out, you still have choices. You can nudge things differently, and sometimes you can't. And then it's a matter, like I said, of how you handle it. But for the most part, I love being wrong. I love it when I'm wrong because that means somebody made a different choice. Different things happened. They had the opportunity to change things to better themselves, better the situation, or at least be able to handle what's coming in a little differently. And I love that. I do. I absolutely love that. It's not often that I'm wrong, but I do love it when I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in our just last little bit of time here, what else would you like me or the audience to know about you, your services, anything?
Right. I just think that, I love just being as a resource. I offer private appointments and virtual. I have clients all over the world. And so that's amazing. Everybody gets a recorded copy of the session so that way they can come back to the information. If things don't make sense or they play out a little differently, I always welcome, hey, let me know, come chat with me about it. Let me know how things go. Because I'm also curious too, like I want to be doing the best at my job so you can have the best reading possible. So that is one aspect. I also read for free on first Fridays out here in Bremerton. That's how I give back to my community. Tips are appreciated as always, but it's not a requirement. I love reading for new people there, people new to tarot, people new to the community. And that's one way how I remain accessible to people who might not be able to afford my hourly rates, right?
Yeah.
That's a choice on how to, still be a part of the community and make it work. And yeah, I also read on for the collective on all the major social media channels. I have a newsletter. You can go to my website and add your email in to get a part of that. Yeah. That's kind of really it. Like, I love what I do. I'm fortunate. I'm passionate. I get to do everything and bring my whole self to the table, which is a lot and it's wonderful and amazing. And it allows me to have beautiful friendships and meet wonderful people and learn new things all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, so share what your website is
Yes.
and how you are found on the social
Right.
medias.
So my website is downtoearthoracle.com, and you can find me under all social media at the handler of at Down to Earth Oracle. No numbers, no nothing like that, just straight up Down to Earth Oracle.
Down to Earth Oracle. Excellent.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Jess, it's always a pleasure to see you. And then thank you so much for being on. And
Wonderful. Yeah.
I
Thank
encourage
you for, yeah.
everyone to get an appointment with Jess. She
Yes.
is amazing. And whether you're a business owner or not, like it's
Yep.
worth it. So,
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate being here so much.
yeah. And for those of you watching or listening, thank you for your time. And I'll see you next time on Connection to the Cosmos. Aloha.